Life's ambition was to be a star.
Never recovered from the public scandal.
On June 2nd, 1996, one of the most popular game show hosts in television history committed suicide in the psychiatric ward of a hospital near Los Angeles. The cause of death, hanging.
I couldn't believe it.
The surprising story of how a successful and popular television star could take his own life is a mystery friends and family would only later unravel. 10 years before he took his own life, Ray Combs was the stuff of Hollywood legend. He was working a part-time stand-up comedy gig, warming up the studio audience for a popular sitcom, when he caught the eye of his idol, Johnny Carson. Johnny invited him on The Tonight Show, and from that one appearance, the little-known comic was unexpectedly offered the high-profile job of hosting The Family Feud. Producers had picked him over hundreds of rivals to replace original host Richard Dawson, whose ratings were slumping after 9 years with the show. With his wit and charisma, Ray Combs charmed viewers and literally saved The Family Feud. His 6-year run as host had made him a star and earned him millions of dollars. On the surface, it had all been like a Hollywood dream come true for the Midwestern kid who married his high school sweetheart, moved to Los Angeles, and found wealth and fame with the help of a show business legend.
It's all that we heard about for months and months and months afterwards. Did you see it? Did you see? I got a standing ovation. I was the only person to get a standing ovation. Did you see it? Did you see it?
But the reality of Ray Combs' life was far murkier. Periods of his life were marked by separation from his wife and kids, who fought to stay in Ohio, far from the Hollywood fast lane. And even the job that made him a star seemed like a career-threatening detour for a man who had longed to be a stand-up comic and talk show host.
Turned out after a while that he and I did not have too good a relationship because I was producing Family Feud and he was trying to do the Ray Combs show. And there's a very big chasm between the two.
Nevertheless, Ray's boundless goodwill and energy seemed to help him defy adversity. But suddenly, it all fell apart, just as quickly as it had magically happened. In just 2 short years, Ray would lose his job, his family, face paralysis from a terrible car accident, and finally, at age 40, take his own life inside a hospital psychiatric ward. How did a funny, caring, and giving man change into a sad and desperate soul? How could such a successful performer die penniless and leave his wife and kids in debt? And how could a devout family man who dearly loved his 6 children and brought joy to millions of total strangers suddenly give up on himself? In the coming hour, we will answer those questions that still haunt the people who knew and loved Ray Combs.
They say everything happens for a reason. I'm still kind of waiting for the reason.
You will hear from fellow comics who saw in Ray Combs a very special person and a unique talent.
He was a fun-loving, generous, good-hearted person.
You will see the breakthrough performance that launched a rising star.
And here is Ray Combs.
Personally, I was glad they canceled The Love Boat. I used to watch it every week, just hoping it would accidentally drift into Soviet waters.
And you will learn of the painful disappointment that damaged his promising career.
He just walked off stage during the final commercial break and walked out of the studio and out of the building, and that was it. He was very hurt.
You will hear about the devastating accident that changed his life.
Hollywood really was talking in his head. Things did not look good. They looked rather grim.
And we will reveal the personal demons that haunted him in his final tragic days.
There was a great fear, I think, within Ray that the dark side of Ray was too dark, too difficult to deal with.
This is the story of a man who loved people, laughter, and life, yet took a terrible turn onto a sad and lonely path that ended with tears and tragedy. This is the story of Ray Combs, the true Hollywood story. Ray Combs was the second child born to a poor family struggling to make ends meet in Hamilton, Ohio, a blue-collar town north of Cincinnati. The date was April 3rd, 1956. Eventually, there would be 6 children in the Combs family. Ray's parents, Ray Sr. and Anita Combs, knew right away their son was something special.
Growing up, he was an achiever. He did his best at everything he did, and he always tried to excel. He was about as close to perfection as you could possibly have as a child.
Money was always tight, but his older sister Connie remembers how Ray kept the family spirits high.
He was spontaneous. He was full of life. He just was magical. He made our house a house of laughter and a house of love.
But beneath the love and laughter, Ray would sometimes experience dramatic mood shifts that his brothers saw firsthand.
He was always on, and when he wasn't on, he didn't really want to be around nobody. He would sleep for a couple of days and just kind of hide out in his bedroom.
Even as a child, Ray was yearning for something more, and then came an encounter which changed the course of his life. It happened in 1964 when he was only 8 years old.
They came to our door. They used to wear hats back then. It was kind of scary because it was nighttime, and we opened up the door, and here are two men in hats, and it was like, da-da-da-da-da-da. But there was a light that came with these men.
It turned out there was nothing ominous about these men in black. They were missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as Mormons. Although he was still a very young boy, Ray and Sister Connie decided to join the Mormon Church. It was a serious commitment, as his high school pal Tim Simer recalls.
If you were out with Ray, you didn't curse and you didn't drink, and in fact it rubbed off on people that were around him. People just didn't talk that way around him. It was almost an opposite influence. You know, you say a good kid goes bad. It was like the bad kids went good.
Ray also made time for a cute brown-eyed girl who lived just a block away. Friend Gary Roberts saw a lot of Ray and Debbie Mink.
They were inseparable. Inseparable. And everyone kind of, that was what, when you mentioned one, you knew the other one was someone close. If you saw one, you didn't see one without the other.
Debbie and Ray's relationship blossomed during their years at Garfield High School, where Ray found lots of outlets for his abundant energy and his constant craving for attention. In the classroom, Ray excelled. And as a senior, he was named class president. But his true love was performing. English teacher and local TV talk show host Colleen Armstrong recalls the first time she met Ray after a school play.
And I was introduced to this little guy, and we grinned at each other, and it was like there was this connection there. It was only later on, many years later on, that I realized that that kind of connection was something that Ray managed to establish with everybody. It wasn't just me, and it wasn't like we were that close. It was just that he made you feel like you were that close.
Ray's ability to connect with people held potential for greatness and fit well with the words of wisdom he received from his father.
The greatest gift God can possibly give you is the ability to make people laugh. Someday, you're going to be a star yourself.
When the E! True Hollywood story continues, Ray Combs breaks from his small-town roots to make his mark in show business.
David Letterman gave him the advice. He wrote to David Letterman and said, how do I make it as a comedian in Hollywood?
And later, he sees the dark side of Hollywood.
They were just pulling and pulling and took everything they could.
Don't miss Totally High on 1993. Sunday, all the...
Charmin Ultra. Now that feels good.
Less is more. Chow, chow, chow.
Ultra.
Charmin.
Many kids attending high school in Hamilton, Ohio during the mid-70s did not graduate. But Ray Combs not only graduated, he won all the top honors given in his hometown.
He was his class president.
Class president.
The school representative to Boys State. He was nominated to West Point. He was the boy of the year, the first boy of the year at the Boys Club. He was Civic Day mayor.
Hard to remember all of them.
Ray was not about to rest on his laurels after leaving Garfield High School in 1974. He enrolled at nearby Miami of Ohio University, where he was encouraged to develop his comedy skills, as his sister Connie Riggs remembers.
By the time he reached college at Miami University, he had a speech teacher that told him, you have got to do something with this. This is not just a talent that you had in high school. This is a gift that you have, and you have got to do something with it.
But first, Ray felt compelled to answer a higher calling. Mormon Bishop Paul Manwaring explains the commitment required of members in their service to the church.
The purpose of a mission, or a missionary that serves in the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is to go out and serve the Lord for 2 years.
Ray was sent to the Mormon mission in Tempe, Arizona. His sister knew this was a journey into uncharted waters.
So it wasn't like he had a long pioneer lineage here of people going on missions. What he did was discover new worlds for us, and what he did took a lot of courage. And it also meant that he was willing to take huge risks that we could never fathom.
There would be more and much bigger risks in the future. But with his commitment to the church completed, Ray was eager to return to his hometown and his childhood sweetheart. Debbie Mink and Ray were married in 1977, a few months after he came home, and their marriage proved an old theory about romance.
They were always the perfect example of opposites attract, because he was outgoing and effervescent and full of light and life and compassion and giving, and she was always shy and withdrawn and quiet. They were exact opposites in every way imaginable.
The newlyweds stayed near Hamilton while Ray worked and finished college. A year later, he and Debbie moved to Indianapolis, where Ray took a sales job. Store owner Bill Heeb, who had hired Ray as a kid, never doubted that his favorite employee would succeed as a furniture salesman.
The youngest salesman ever hired in the history of the company. And he had the whole state of Indiana. He worked there for a few years. He was making a salary at that time of $150,000.
Success in sales came easy, and in 1979, the Combs welcomed their first child. But Ray was restless. He wanted to be on stage again. High school teacher Colleen Armstrong recalls one of her favorite Ray Combs stories.
He would lie awake at night after watching Johnny Carson and see comedians on stage, and he felt he could do the job better. He would lie awake at night and think to himself, I should be there. That's what I should be doing.
Ray worked up a comedy routine and started knocking on doors. He got his chance at an Indianapolis Holiday Inn, where he became friends with a promising young comedian named Jay Leno. A second child was born in 1981, but there was little free time for family or friends. By day, Ray sold furniture. By night, he told jokes.
It's called Lamaze, fellas. Have you heard of this? Now, Lamaze is a French word that means scream.
Ray's appeal in the Midwest fueled his desire to take a shot at the big time.
David Letterman gave him the advice. He wrote to David Letterman and said, how do I make it as a comedian in Hollywood? And David Letterman wrote back and said, first you move to Hollywood.
With a lucrative job, a stable marriage, and 2 young children to support, Ray was at a crossroads. But Hollywood was calling, and it was there that he could pursue his destiny, to be in the limelight and stand at center stage.
It was never, I want to do this, it's I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a star. I'm going to make people laugh.
As he agonized over leaving the Midwest and facing an uncertain future, he turned to his father for advice.
And he said, Dad, I got something serious I want to talk to you about. He said, I would like to become a comedian. Go to LA and become a comedian. And you know how much money I'm making, and what do you think? And I said, well, let me just put it to you this simply, Ray. What would you enjoy doing more than anything in this world? He said, being a comedian. I said, then you answered your own question.
In 1983, Ray left Indianapolis and moved to Los Angeles, but his wife did not follow. Instead, Debbie Combs took their 2 children back to Hamilton, Ohio. Years later, Ray joked about the decision that came so close to wrecking his marriage.
We almost got divorced. I was very bitter. I could not understand why she would not follow me. Today, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
why
sure
she did not
does.
follow me. There were literally, she made the point that there were more astronauts. There are more astronauts than there are comedians in the world, and she tried to get me, well, go to Houston. If you're going to do something, go to Houston because you're in outer space.
The young comic was on the brink of losing his family, but he believed in his talent and was willing to take that huge risk to chase his dream. When the E! True Hollywood story continues, Ray Combs beats the odds to become a standout stand-up comedian and catches the eye of the legend himself, Johnny Carson. But he'll learn that success is a double-edged sword.
There were times when there were a lot of emotions, you know, and tears were shed.
Join the digital cable from Cable One. It doesn't get any better than this.
At the age of 26, Ray Combs had risked it all, his job, marriage, even his 2 children, to make the improbable journey from Hamilton, Ohio to Hollywood.
He said that he had spoken to David Letterman, who said to look me up. That was the 35th comic that week who had told me they'd spoken to David Letterman and to come out here.
Ray Combs was willing to gamble his future on his dream of making it as a comedian. Bob Fisher, owner of the Ice House Comedy Club, decided to give a naive young comic his chance.
We started him emceeing on Tuesday night. So at the time, he lacked the material, not unusual, as I say, for young comics, but he had amazing stage presence and energy and personality. That's about 2/3 of the battle, so he did great.
Ray quickly moved up the comedy ladder, from MC to feature act to headliner. His success was no surprise to popular LA radio personality Jim Poorman Trenton.
I mean, I've interviewed most of the top comedians that are around today. I mean, I've interviewed Roseanne, Carrot Top, Bobcat Goldthwait, Pauly Shore, Sam Kinison before he died. I had Bob Saget on a couple of times. And to me, Ray Combs was the best.
With his stand-up career taking off, Ray was finally able to convince his wife to leave Ohio. Debbie Combs brought their 2 young children to Los Angeles and in 1984 gave birth to their 3rd child. Although he had another mouth to feed, Ray took a brand new risk, choosing to follow a path that few comedians had traveled, as comic Jeff Wayne remembers.
What Ray did was rather clever. He went to do audience warm-ups. Now, the audience warm-ups is a completely different type of performer than your classic comedian. But what he did that was unique, he really did sort of combine stand-up with what he was doing. It was really funny.
Ray's energy and quick wit brought a new level of excitement to sitcom audiences. Writer Mike Metzger was amazed at the response.
It was not a warm-up. It was a takeover. He killed the audience with his warm-up. That's how good it was.
Ray was suddenly a sought-after talent by producers, including Jeff Kaufman of the popular sitcom Amen.
And so having a guy that can keep the audience around take after take and having them laugh take after take is essential to having an exciting and a fun show.
The star of Amen, Sherman Hemsley, also watched Ray work.
You just walk up to people and make them feel at ease, and people just love him. You know. It's just had that gift of gab. In fact, we sometimes used to worry about him being better than our show.
This ability to connect with his audience made Ray the top warm-up comic in town. But he had his sights set on a much bigger prize. Ray wanted all of America to hear his jokes, and his vehicle was taped in the studio right next door.
I would sneak into the Tonight Show set every Friday, early in the afternoon, and stand on the star. And I would imagine what it would be like, because I knew that someday I would get to do it.
A lifelong dream was about to become reality when Ray's idol, Johnny Carson, overheard hysterical laughter coming from the set of Amen. Then came the invitation every comic lives for.
Most comedians don't consider themselves really a comic until they've been on The Tonight Show. The Tonight Show is their graduation. That's the ceremony. That says you are a comic and you're a successful comic.
On October the 23rd, 1986 at 12:13 Eastern Daylight Standard Time, those curtains opened up.
And here is Ray Combs.
I don't speak German. Now, help me out. I know they told you not to speak, but you can speak if you want. How do you say I love you in German, just as an example? Ich liebe dich. There you go. Now, if I'm with a girl, and she says ich liebe dich, I'm picking up my Cleaverty, and I'm Leverty. I'm out of there.
The Tonight Show audience gave him a standing ovation, a first for a comedian's debut in the show's 30-year history.
And as I looked over and I saw this twinkling, I saw Johnny going, great stuff. Come over here. And you know that only 3 times in history has anyone made that walk unexpectedly. Not since David Letterman had anyone done that. I started to cry. And he cut away so they wouldn't see me cry. And Lily Tomlin was sitting in this chair, and Johnny Carson was in that chair. And when Lily Tomlin hugged me, she said, you're a star. You've made it. You've done what few people have ever done.
It was a magical moment for Ray Combs, a dream come true, one he loved to share with family and friends.
It was not only him that made it at that point. We all made it, a piece of us all.
It's all that we heard about for months and months and months afterwards. Did you see it? Did you see it? I got a standing ovation. I was the only person to get a standing ovation. Did you see it? Did you see it?
After his Tonight Show triumph, Ray's life was never the same, and he believed that nothing could erase the happiness from that wonderful memory. When the E! True Hollywood story continues, a star is born, but behind the bright lights, dark shadows are looming.
And then I started to notice that he was starting to look to me a little bit out of control.
She's tired of the rumors.
I don't think I'm a bad girl.
Family Feud was one of the most popular game shows on TV. But after 9 years with Richard Dawson as host, ratings were starting to slip. In 1986, producers decided the Family Feud needed a makeover, and they wanted a fresh face to breathe new energy into this old favorite.
We were looking for an MC. We tried many, many people. Everybody wanted to be the MC of Family Feud.
Ray Combs was still riding an incredible high from his Tonight Show performance when he got a call that would change his life. Family Feud producer Howard Felcher remembers hearing great things about a talented young comic.
Well, there were several people who, for whom I have a lot of respect in our business, who said, gee, you're looking for an MC, you're looking for a guy with a really good ad-lib sense of humor. You ought to see a fellow named Ray Combs. He's just funny. He's just really funny. He's very good.
Ray had shared the stage with Johnny Carson and made it his own. Now he was about to meet another television legend, the king of TV game shows and creator of Family Feud. The late Mark Goodson chose Ray to host the new Family Feud. It was a perfect match. Ray Combs' down-home love for people was genuine, as writer Mike Metzger remembers.
He was a people person, you know? He was perpetually excited by people. Any person that he talked to was worth something in human value, and that's what he communicated.
He also had a very good sense of humor. He was a funny guy. He'd come up with some amazing ad-libs, but he also very often showed a sense of softness, gentleness, and that, I think, audiences respond to.
The new Family Feud built a strong and loyal audience and became a bona fide hit with Ray Combs as MC.
The ratings go up and up and up. It currently is the most aired show on television, an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week. That's a lot of Feud.
Ray was a star, making a star's salary, nearly $1 million a year. But his feet remained firmly planted on the ground, as friend and fellow comic Jeff Jenner recalls.
He was the kind of guy who, even when he was at his peak of success, when he had the Feud and things were going really well for him, he was still the same guy.
Actress Melody Thomas Scott of the daytime soap The Young and the Restless worked in the studio next to Family Feud.
One time I asked him if he would host a benefit that I was having for the Save the Earth Foundation, and it was on a Saturday night. It was a busy time of year, and I almost didn't ask him because I thought, it's late notice, he's not going to be able to do it. And he said, absolutely, Mel, I'll be there.
The folks back in Hamilton, Ohio also counted on their hometown hero. Friend Gary Roberts remembers how Ray always came through.
Anything we asked him to do, any program, any fundraiser, any contribution, he was there. He was always there without question, without hesitation.
Ray was generous with his time and even more generous with his money. His brothers recall a special moment in an unlikely place.
Remember that time he let his beard grow out, put on an old hobo outfit, and into this homeless shelter down here, and they didn't have funds, it was about to close down. And he went there and see how they would treat him. They gave him some food and stuff, and he whipped out his checkbook and wrote him a check for $30,000.
Success had brought fame and fortune to a kid from the wrong side of the tracks in a blue-collar town. One of his biggest fans was then President George Bush, who invited Ray to join him aboard Air Force One. Ray Combs had soared to heights even he had not imagined, and his star continued to climb when his dream to own the biggest comedy club in the country became reality. In 1990, Caddy Combs opened to sell-out crowds in Cincinnati, not far from his hometown of Hamilton. Sherman Hemsley remembers being on stage and being upstaged by the club owner who never tired of the applause.
He'd always come in at the end of the show and join in the show and steal the crowd. And that was cool. It just fit so perfect. He'd come and yell and scream and dance, and people say, hey, the way he had it so it never stopped. You know what I mean? Like the show would end and then it would pick just right up again and it would just continue and take it to another level. He was that way.
A dispute with business associates forced the closing of Cattycombs a year after it opened. But Ray remained undaunted, and a second Cincinnati club quickly followed. Ray's $1 million salary from the feud fueled his generous spirit and financed his business operations. But his sister worried about a day when the incredible ride would end.
They were just pulling and pulling and took everything they could from him.
When the True Hollywood story continues, Ray Combs' career takes a sudden, unexpected turn.
He just walked off stage during the final commercial break and walked out of the studio and out of the building, and that was it.
And his life in the fast lane spins horribly out of control.
When he came into the emergency room, he was quadriparetic. In other words, he couldn't move his arms or his legs.
Don't miss.
Ray Combs entertained millions of TV viewers every day with his quick wit and zany antics, and his remarkable talent brought riches he had only imagined. Celebrity status, a luxurious home, a beautiful family that had grown to 6 children. It was a perfect life, or so it seemed.
You know, it's a difficult thing when you have a lot of success dumped in your lap.
And success would demand a lot from the host of Family Feud.
All the pressure that was put on Ray, Ray put on himself. And there was a lot. He was, he had to succeed for his own ego reasons.
Ray Combs tried desperately to hold on to his dream. His sister watched him wrestle with feelings of unhappiness that began to overwhelm his life.
He was sad because he had a troubled marriage that was falling apart.
Ray decided that his hometown would provide a better environment for raising his children and saving his marriage. He bought a large home in Hamilton, Ohio, and in 1992 moved the family back. For a time, the move seemed to work, but eventually, Ray and his wife Debbie were torn further apart as Ray juggled an impossible schedule, commuting to Hollywood to host the Family Feud and struggling with his failing comedy club in Cincinnati. Friend and comic Jeff Jenna agreed to help by performing for far less than his normal rate.
The last time I worked for him, you know, he said, hey, listen, we're not doing that well, and it'd be great if you could come in, and could you help me out on the, you know, the price a little bit?
His comedy club was sinking in a sea of red ink, yet Ray seemed to take the losses in stride. He had never craved fortune, but he desperately sought fame.
He truly thrived on the public attention. That is what re-energized him, was people. I mean, and the love and the admiration of people, because he gave it right back to them. But that is what made him thrive, was just the acceptance and people acknowledging that, hey, aren't you that guy from Family Feud?
Back in Ohio, Ray's family missed their California lifestyle. They moved back to Los Angeles. But Ray and Debbie continued to feel the strain on their marriage and decided to separate. Ray moved out and into his own apartment in nearby Burbank. With their 6 children now ranging in age from 2 to 14, it was a tough decision. In 1994, the pressures began to mount as ratings on the Family Feud began to slide, and problems developed between Ray and the show's producer.
It turned out after a while that he and I did not have too good a relationship, because I was producing Family Feud, and he was trying to do the Ray Combs show. And there's a very big chasm between the two.
Then, following the death of creator Mark Goodson, his son Jonathan took over the show, and he brought in consultant Harris Cattleman.
And Cattleman said to Jonathan, listen, you know, if we don't do better this next year, we are going to probably not get renewed after this next year. And Jonathan said, well, what would you do about it? He said, well, I'd bring back Richard Dawson. And whereupon I said, that's probably the worst single thing you can do. The worst single thing you can do.
Ray's 6-year run on Family Feud was over. His last day on the set was especially tough.
He just walked off stage during the final commercial break and walked out of the studio and out of the building, and that was it. He was very hurt. He was very hurt. And he had a right to be.
Beverly Pomerantz and Bill Maxwell worked closely with Ray and shared their friend's pain.
And when something like that happens, I think your ego gets busted.
And Ray he would say, you just can't believe how much I'm hurting.
Club owner Bob Fisher had seen the rise and fall of many comedians and knew why the loss of the Family Feud hit Ray like a hammer.
A, you're in the public eye.
which was important to Ray. B, you're making big money, which is important, and then they take that all away from you.
But fate had even more trouble in store for Ray. And that trouble would strike him at high speed on LA's Ventura Freeway. Ray's car was clipped from behind, sending him into a tailspin. Another car hit him broadside. Following the horrible accident, Ray was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank, where he was treated by Dr. Emilio Cruz.
He basically broke his neck. When he came into the emergency room, he was quadriparetic. In other words, he couldn't move his arms or his legs. And all he could do really was talk and move his head. Things did not look good. They looked rather grim. You know, there was fear and anxiety in those eyes. He knew what the number was.
Ray was given large doses of a powerful drug to reduce the swelling of his spine, and he soon regained movement in his arms and legs. But his painful ordeal was just beginning.
Thereafter, he was in the hospital for at least a month recovering on the acute rehab unit. So his life was never the same after that.
Most of the physical injuries would heal. The psychological damage ran much deeper. Following his release from the hospital, friends and family saw a dramatic change in Ray Combs.
I noticed a change in him. I noticed a personality change.
There were times when there were a lot of emotions, you know, and tears were shed.
He seemed sadder and tired, and I don't know if they were giving him pain medication, but just he was not quite the same Ray tried to be. But it just, something wasn't right.
He didn't often enough allow himself to be himself. There was a great fear, I think, within Ray that the dark side of Ray was too dark, too difficult to deal with, and if I just kept behaving this way, I don't even have to begin to focus on it.
When the 80 True Hollywood story continues, Ray Combs faces the toughest challenge of his life.
I had no idea that he was feeling as desperate as he must have been.
And the battle brings a frantic cry for help.
Received a phone call from him. This is what was so shocking to us.
She's tired.
See what blooms this month on HSN.
Ray Combs had risked his future and his family to achieve his dream. For a while, he won the gamble. But when his luck ran out, Ray could not cope with a deepening sense of despair and even threatened to take his own life.
The suicide had come up. The issue of suicide had come up. The threat of suicide had come up a number of times in the last couple of years with he and Debbie. The Glendale Police Department was no stranger to Ray.
Following the near-fatal car accident in 1995, Ray struggled through a long and grueling period of recovery. Connie Riggs knew the suffering that her brother endured.
And the only relief would be the wheelchair or, you know, the support of the cane. But he never wanted people to know that. But he was always in pain. And he knew that that wasn't going to go away.
Dr. Emilio Cruz followed Ray's progress during his 9-month rehab program.
He made a good recovery, but he never enjoyed quite the mobility and I think the confidence in your capacity to walk and to move your arms and to do the things that you had done before.
Pain was a constant companion, yet Ray forced himself to climb on the comeback trail. Hoping to find the old spark that had carried him to the top, he appeared on a series of cable programs.
Excuse me, Arthur, you know Ray.
Ray! How you doing, Arthur?
How are you? And Larry, you know my friend Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Host of Family Feud.
Yeah, Larry. Hey, we're on our way to the smokehouse. You want to go?
Yeah, come on. We're having a couple of beer skis.
Oh, beer skis. As much as that, no, survey says no.
Ray tested a talk show idea at television trade shows, but it fizzled.
Thank you, please, thank you. I did not expect this kind of ovation. Thank you. My name is Ray Combs. Welcome to the Ray Combs Show.
He even tried local TV, guest hosting with Los Angeles personality Poor Man Trenton, where flashes of the old Ray Combs emerged.
The Love Channel. I want people to do this with me.
Appearing on the Game Show Network with host Laura Chambers, it was clear that Ray had never lost his love affair with the audience.
When the red light was on, he was absolutely charming. He was his old self, as far as I knew, you know, the persona that I expected to have Ray Combs, game show host.
You know, I'd much rather have you here than Mel Gibson.
Whoa! Pinocchio syndrome.
No, I would.
Ray Combs could still light up the screen, but there was a darkness lurking inside he could no longer contain.
When the red light was off, he sometimes seemed a little bit disjointed, and he talked about a lot of things that, quite frankly, I didn't believe in. It was almost as though he had delusions of grandeur.
Despite his inner turmoil, Ray tackled another cable show in the spring of 1996 and tried to summon the energy as the host of the Family Challenge.
He won the pancake relay. Another 100 points, giving them 360. And we got 4 pancakes.
But friends were aware this new show was no Family Feud.
I know personally he didn't really like doing the show. It was just something he had to do to make a living until something else came along.
I saw it one time. It wasn't Ray. It wasn't what he was supposed to be doing. It was obvious that it was not what he wanted to be doing. I guess it was a little bit like a ship that was going out of control.
I started to notice that he was starting to look to me a little bit out of control, you know? Disturbed, volatile, you know, disappointed, kind of grumpy, kind of insecure somehow.
Separated from his wife and desperately missing his 6 children, Ray was drifting further and further away from everything and everyone he held dear. His legal and financial problems mounted. His second comedy club shut its doors in 1995, and the losses were staggering. Then the bank was forced to foreclose on his home in Hamilton, Ohio. The comic who had earned $1 million salary was drowning in debt. His problems were overwhelming him, but Ray tried to rally to host a special Memorial Day edition of Family Challenge. When the cameras rolled, he struggled with a show that he had taped many times.
And he was even more disjointed than possible before. He had all sorts of difficulty remembering what the score was. It was almost as though he'd forgotten how to do the show. And he kept saying over and over again, oh, I'm a little rusty here. I can't seem to remember. And it was really sad to me.
By the end of that week, Ray's life was spiraling out of control. Early on the morning of Friday, June 1st, Ray made a frantic call to his wife from his apartment. He was sobbing and hysterical. Debbie dialed 911. Paramedics responded, then rushed Ray to nearby St. Joseph's Medical Center, where he was treated and released for an overdose of Valium. But the ordeal was far from over. Later that morning, while driving her husband home from the hospital, Debbie watched in shock as Ray jumped from the car at a red light, dashed down the street, and disappeared behind some houses. A few hours later, he showed up at the family home in Glendale, shouting and acting irrational. Debbie and the children were in the backyard.
One of the kids was sent to the house to lock the house so he couldn't get in, and he got upset.
Now in a rage, Ray forced his way into the house. Debbie called the police, who responded quickly. They found Ray standing on the front steps, his head bleeding badly. He claimed to have fallen in the jacuzzi. The officers administered first aid, then drove him to Glendale Adventist Hospital for treatment. In the emergency room, Ray became violent. The police determined he was suicidal and a danger to others, and had him placed on a 72-hour mental observation hold. At 2 a.m. the next morning, June 2nd, 1996, a depressed and broken Ray Combs cried out for help.
Received a phone call from him. This is what was so shocking to us, and said, if you care anything at all about me, get on a plane and get here and get a hold of Connie and get here as quickly as you can.
While Connie and her parents scrambled to make flight arrangements, the cold reality of his vanished dream and a life gone horribly wrong became too much for Ray Combs to bear. Lost and alone, he removed the sheets from his bed and with his final steps approached the closet.
On Sunday, June 2nd, the hospital called us and said that they found Mr. Coombs had hung himself in the closet in their psych ward at 4:10 in the morning.
When the E! True Hollywood story continues, family and friends react to a tragic loss.
Can't describe.
No.
Can't explain.
No.
Can't even explain that.
No. I don't think...
As long as it's been, I still find it hard to believe.
And say goodbye to a special friend.
He lived his dream, and he was my best friend.
She's tired.
Bloomberg's Morning Call.
Ray Ray Combs was only 40 years old when his life ended suddenly. His death was made even more tragic because of the way he lived, with abundant energy, a generous spirit, and a passion to perform.
I think I'd have to say he was the ultimate entertainer. Even when he wasn't in front of a camera, he always felt obligated to entertain you.
The humor of Ray Combs struck a chord with people everywhere who saw him as one of them. The reactions to his death were heartfelt and profoundly moving from former co-workers and longtime friends.
It shocked me. It really completely shocked me.
I just, I couldn't believe it. That was a tough one.
My reaction was really one of, I guess, disbelief and shock.
His family was devastated by their loss.
Can't describe.
No.
Can't explain.
No.
Can't even explain that.
No. I don't think...
As long as it's been, I still find it hard to believe.
I loved him so much. I loved Ray so much.
I think that's probably the worst pain that I'll ever know.
6 children, ages 5 through 17, were left without a father. And Ray's wife, Debbie, who declined to be interviewed for this story, was saddled with over $500,000 of debt. And perhaps the saddest of all ironies, the hero of Hamilton, Ohio, who had given so much to so many, was buried in his hometown without a headstone. There simply was no money to buy one. But when Ray's many friends heard of the family's financial plight, they organized a series of fundraisers to help Debbie and the children and to make sure Ray had a proper memorial. One who gave generously was Ray's idol. Johnny Carson wrote a check for $25,000. Within a year of Ray's death, Debbie Combs remarried and began putting her life back together while her children faced the loss of their father. And back in an Ohio cemetery, the grave of Ray Combs got a simple marker, the way his family said he would have wanted it. Ray left no suicide note to explain why he killed himself. And for his family and close friends, only time will heal the wounds left by his death. But in the end, Ray Combs will be remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived.
This is a man who came from incredibly humble beginnings. Never forgot that, but was very proud of the journey that he made.
He wanted to be remembered as being someone who could make people laugh.
I think that he'd also like to be remembered for, well, for all the good things that he did in life. And he did do a lot of good things.
Great guy. He was the kind of guy you just lit up when you saw him, and he'd go into some comedic routine or something to make you laugh. He just was like that, just sweethearted.
It was wonderful to be his parents. And that will always be one of my greatest feelings of joy, that we were his parents. And I'll always be proud to say that.
There were no regrets in his life because he had went and sought after everything he had ever wanted.
And that he was a guy that made it, for that one brief shining moment he had.